Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. We have Zachary Levi back with us today because as we're watching everything that is going on in Washington, D.C., I think we would be remiss if we didn't have you on to talk about what's happening with Bobby Kennedy, RFK. You've all seen him being, I guess I would say, lambasted and attacked by these senators. I mean, Elizabeth Warren was pretty hilarious when she was going after him. But I just want to say that there's a reason he's there, and it's because people like Zachary Levi believe in him. So I want to say welcome and thank you for coming back on the podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to see you. I always love talking to you, and particularly about things that are important. And Bobby's important.
Yes.
This appointment is important. This moment in human history is important. You know, I think what's really fascinating is that a lot of these senators, like Elizabeth Warren, like even Bernie Sanders, who, you know, I don't agree with a lot of Bernie's thoughts or policy ideas or whatever. We're on very different sides of the spectrum of capitalism to socialism or whatever all that is. But I've always found him to be at least someone who kind of, walks to the beat of his own drum, even within his own party, and is willing to, even, by the way, posted on socials, weeks leading up to this lambasting, this interrogation, talking about the importance of
very
making
emotional.
America. Oh my God, he got super emotional. And as did Elizabeth Warren, but a lot of it, I go, how much of this is real and how much of this is show? Because, you hear stories of people that were sitting there in the audience, and Bernie was, very passionate when he's talking, but he was barely paying attention when anybody else was talking to Bobby Kennedy. And it bums me out because I really want, I want to like Bernie. I want to like him. Even though I don't agree with a lot of what he's about policy wise, I wanted to believe that he is the guy that he kind of portends to be, or that he puts himself out there to be. And when he starts going off about corruption, and I loved that Bobby didn't pull any punches in that moment. He goes, listen, if we want to talk about corruption, everyone on this panel right now has taken money from pharmaceutical companies. In fact, you're number one. He's like, oh, no. I knew you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say this. These were individuals. These were not the pharmaceutical companies. But it's not true. That's simply not true. He and so many other senators, by the way, on both sides of the aisle, are taking massive amounts of money from special interest. And this is one of the biggest problems that we have. This is why we're in the pickle that we're in right now. Why do we need to make America healthy again? It's because it used to be healthy, and then big industry got in there and was like, well, how can we make more money?
Well,
how can we do it?
What you're pointing out is so funny to me, because the whole reason they were attacking him was like, are you going to sue? Are you going to personally benefit? It wasn't about what he said about health. There was a conversation about vaccines. There was a conversation about making money. It wasn't about, man, thank you for pointing out food dyes are bad. Hey, it's good to know that we might have a food system that hasn't been fully vetted by the FDA. Thanks for talking about this stuff. And maybe vaccines shouldn't have this immunity. But I have a couple clips I want to play from Elizabeth Warren. The first one actually is going to be for our producer, John. It's going to be I want to play the one about the donations, because I think this shows how sort of innocent Bobby Kennedy was in his just wanting to get the right message, the MAHA message forward. So this is her talking about him getting donations. Here it is.
Commit that when you leave this job, you will not accept compensation from a drug company, a medical device company, a hospital system, or a health insurer for at least 4 years, including as a lobbyist or a board member.
Can you just repeat the last part of the question? Can I commit?
You're not going to take money from drug companies in any way, shape, or form.
Me?
Yes, you.
Oh. I'm happy to commit to that.
Okay, good. That's what I figured. I said it's an easy question to start with. And I think you're right on this.
I don't think any of them want to give me money, by the way.
Let's keep.
That's the beauty of it. No, this is the guy that they don't want to give money to.
That's so ridiculous. It is absolutely. I mean, I'm glad they all got a laugh about it, and I'm glad that Diane Warren was at least somewhat kind of light and jovial in that. I don't understand why she would even waste her time asking a question that is so rhetorically stupid. I mean,
Well, I will tell you why.
Going after these people. Why would he ever be involved in any of that? It doesn't make any sense.
Because that's how Washington works. That's the sick, twisted part about this. The reason they ask these questions is because it's happened before. It's like when you say, why does the x-ray machine at the airport say not to put your kid through it? Because someone put their kid through it, because someone made money off of their position, being the Secretary of Health and Human Services or being the Secretary of Education. There's somebody who has done something corrupt in the system to make money. And that's why she has to ask that question. How ridiculous.
Well, what the irony is that she's one of the people making that money. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, it seems very, very silly. If I'm her or Bernie or anybody else, I would not want to be talking about any of that stuff. I'd be like, no. We don't need to talk about that. But I will say this, that for all of their grandstanding and everything, and by the way, and this is true of not just Bobby, but also Tulsi, I think they both held their ground so beautifully. Mm-hmm. They are, and you can see it. They are people of integrity. This is why I gravitated toward them and believed in them from day one, because I'm like, this is who leadership is supposed to be. This is what the heart and mind and character of a leader is supposed to be. Someone that is willing to have the grace and integrity to sit there, get lambasted, and hold their ground and not give in to all of this show and this theater. But more than that, I think it's very important, and a lot of people have made this point. Nicole Shanahan, who I just think is fantastic, because she recently made a video and posted this to kind of reiterate this. But MAHA, which is the movement that got me into the MAGA, or whatever, going and supporting Donald Trump, should not have anything to do with partisan anything. It should be entirely bipartisan. This is people wanting to make America healthy again, right? You can argue what makes America great again. People do that all the time, right? There's people that are like, well, what does making it great again mean? If it's going to mean that, this, that, and the other thing. Okay, fine. We can get lost in those details. But there's no question about what is healthy and what is not healthy. And everyone on both sides of the aisle, as far as us, the constituents, the voters, know. We all kind of know. I know. I have very liberal friends and very conservative friends, and all of them are like, I know, right? The food's poisoning us, right? You can go to another country and you can eat bread and it doesn't make your stomach swell up to great proportions. But if you come back here and you eat any amount of gluten that's covered in all the glyphosate and all the nonsense, you start feeling ill. We all see it and we all know it. And so MAHA really was, I fully believe, a massive part, and I think you would probably agree with this, most people would, was a massive part of why Donald Trump got elected. So for these senators to be screwing around with it and somehow not be like, okay, listen, of all the appointments, of all the reasons why this guy got elected, by the way, in the majority, we should not be screwing around with Bobby Kennedy or Tulsi Gabbard for that matter, right? And so for Nicole Shanahan to make that video, I don't know if you saw it, but she basically on social, on Instagram and X and whatever, she said, very, very kind. She's so sweet too. She's got just that sweet kind of disposition about her. And she's like, a lot of people don't know this, but I gave a lot of money to the Democratic Party and I helped Chuck Schumer and other people get elected. And if any of these senators turn their back on the health of America and they do not appoint Bobby Kennedy, I will personally fund campaigns to primary them and get them out of office. And that's beautiful. So powerful. It's so powerful.
I was actually on Fox Business talking about this, and Liz McDonald was like, well, what do you think is going to happen if they don't make it even out of committee? It could be that RFK and Tulsi don't make it out of committee. And I said, I think it's going to be a very hard life for those Republican senators, because there are going to be a lot of Republicans. It'll be the Republicans that people are the most mad at, because they're the ones that came out and said, this is who we want. And independents. I believe independents too. I think there's a good portion of the country that will say, we will work hard to get the people who refuse to allow us to have strong national intelligence and refuse to allow us to have healthy kids. Because I see these MAHA moms that come out and they're like, I mean, you posted one where I think she was a pediatrician, said, I was being told my kids were going to be on lifelong medications. And then I started to research on my own. And this is a physician. To me, that's the most powerful. A physician who said, I don't know if I want my kids on these lifelong meds. We changed our diet and then their whole life changed. Well, I want that too. I want somebody talking to me about that. I want somebody, I mean, when I had cancer, when my dad had cancer, there was not even this is how you should eat on the American Cancer Society website. And that's all changed. It's like this movement has made the entire industry nervous in a good way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, hell hath no fury like a MAHA mom scorn.
That's right.
I mean, because this is not just screwing around with individuals. You're not just screwing around with a single man or a single woman. These are parents. And as a parent of 4 daughters, the mama bear in you, for you to not be getting answers, for things to not be getting better, to be looking at the statistics that whatever, not even that long ago, it was 1 in 100,000 kids had autism. And now in a few years, they're projecting it'll be 1 in 3.
Right. And why can't we research that? Well, actually, that goes into this other Elizabeth Warren clip that I want to show you, because I want to talk about what she says about vaccine and the vaccine companies' immunity, which is kind of bananas. But let's watch this and then we'll look at that.
This is not only about a private company that gets sued and has to pay out. Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins. If they get sued repeatedly and successfully, they simply move out of the vaccine space. We've already seen this happen with vaccines in the past. 20 years ago, we watched vaccines just move away if they did not have protection from these kinds of lawsuits. The consequence of Mr. Kennedy's ability to make those lawsuits easier is also the ability to shut down access and manufacturing for vaccines for every one of us.
Protect the company over the people, because we know there are so many people who have been injured and they have no voice.
It makes me so angry. It makes me so angry for so many reasons, but it is so intellectually dishonest. If there was any other company making any other product, you wouldn't be sitting there and defending their ability to not be sued for creating a bunk product. You wouldn't do it.
It's exactly what I thought of this morning as I was watching that clip. I was thinking, because we used to make steel castings, and I was thinking, if I made a casting that went out in the field and every Caterpillar tractor broke and someone were injured, it comes back to me. And there is no protection for me because I screwed up. Why can people have terrible lifelong reactions and even death, and they have no recourse?
Yeah, well, that's not how this country was built. This country was built on responsibility. You have to take responsibility, which is what gives us our freedom, right? Like you're in the most traditional sense, like that's what liberty is. You're allowed to go and create a company, and if you make a great product, people will want that product. If you make a product that is not safe, and therefore, let's say not 100% of the time, let's say you make these castings, and not every Caterpillar tractor breaks down, but 30% of them do. Well, guess what? That's on you.
Yep.
That is on you to go then make a better product. That is not on the government to then protect you so that you can keep making a product that's making at least 30% of the tractors break down. And then the people who bought those tractors have no recourse whatsoever. Like, this is absolutely insanity. It is absolutely insanity. I can't believe that these are even conversations that we're tolerating right now.
Well, and there are a lot of people that feel like that stops the research into, well, why is SIDS happening more often? Why can we determine whether it's happening after certain vaccines? And again, it's not every kid, but why are we okay with it being some kids? Why can't we have that conversation? And maybe we have studies that show that autism is not coming from vaccines, but it has gone up. Is it coming from food dyes? Is it coming, why can't we find out? Because these companies are protected. And that I feel strongly about. The companies have more protection now than the people that consume the product.
Yeah. And listen, I've watched enough now of various lawyers and doctors talking about the subject. There has not been All of the studies that we thought had been done for years and years and years about vaccine efficacy and safety, by the way, not just those, but other drugs and whatever, we think that it's all being done. We think, well, clearly we have an FDA and a CDC and all of it, right? We have all these three-letter agencies that are supposed to be regulatory and making sure that we're safe. Well, it turns out that has not been going on. We do not have the studies. They're not there. That's the truth. Now, to your point, what does that mean? I don't know. All Bobby's asking for, and me along with Bobby and a lot of other people that are supporting Bobby, transparency. May we let light be the greatest disinfectant, and may we all be able, because that is informed consent. If we do not actually have all the information, that's not informed consent, which is against HIPAA regulations. There's no reason why any of us should be subjected to this. More than that, certainly not every child who gets vaccinated comes down with, any number of the things. By the way, the fine print of all of these side effects that are in these vaccines, right? Not all of them come down with X, but that doesn't mean not all of them don't come down with something.
Right.
Like autoimmune diseases, allergies. Like why do all of us have, even as adults, like, there are so many problems in our metabolic health. And this is not because of, as far as I know, anything other than the things that we're putting into our bodies. And also, there's other things that people should really be talking about. And I think I'm looking forward to the conversation starting to happen more, which is about like our mitochondria, our circadian rhythm, the amount of blue light and EMF that we're putting into our bodies. Like, for a long time, like almost all of these things, people go, you're a nut job, conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat wearing person. Well, guess what, guys? The data keeps coming out and the data keeps showing that a lot of these things are very true. And it makes a lot of sense. We came up as hunter-gatherer versions of ourselves for thousands and thousands of years. It's only in the last 100, 200 maybe, that we live in this world with artificial light that allows us to stay up well beyond when we ever actually stayed up. And by the way, and that light went from being on the red spectrum, infrared heat spectrum, which is good, healthier light. So this, not to go on too much of a tangent, but when the sun rises in the morning, which is when we're supposed to get up, this is the normal, natural habit of a human being and most all other animals. The sun rises, it's almost exclusively red infrared heat light. So when you look at the sunrise, you can tell it's very orangey red, right? Well, then as it starts getting up to the noon to the midday sky and sun, it's got a lot more ultraviolet. We all know this. That's why you start getting more tan and all these things. It's ultraviolet light that's coming down. And then as it goes back down and it goes to the sunset, the ultraviolet rays and the blue frequency kind of turns off and it goes back to a red, and then it goes away. And then after that went down, the only things we had for, again, thousands of years were campfires and maybe a few lanterns that were flame. And that was all red. That was all heat. We have introduced into our systems a thing that never existed for us, which is this constant ultraviolet blue light in all of our screens, this wonderful technology that we have that we're talking on right now. And I think there's a way to embrace all of these things and also be smart enough to not allow it to be hijacking our own biochemistry so that it's making us sicker. And I believe that it is. But just really quickly on the Diane Warren of it all, one of the things she says in that clip, I cannot and will not stand for, which is these vaccine companies are operating in the smallest of margins.
Right.
Are we? That is absolutely absurd. It is absurd. They are making billions of dollars hand over fist. And that's not just the COVID vaccine, which obviously they made billions of dollars on. All of these vaccines. And they're all forced on every child. You can't even go to a pediatrician and say, hey, I might want to, I have some questions about this. Can we roll this out slower? Can we delay it? Can I not vaccinate my children at all? Can we do these things? Pediatricians will kick you out of their practice.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And why? Because they have quotas that they need to make if they want to get the bonuses that the pharmaceutical companies, the vaccine manufacturers pay them. I mean, if this is not conflict of interest, I don't know what is.
Well, and I think that this movement that Bobby Kennedy started, and I really think it just took off because people were so hungry for answers for why they are so unhealthy, why they're tired, why their body hurts, because our parents didn't feel like this. Why do we feel like this? Like, we're the generation that can remember people not living like this and not being all overweight. We can remember as kids going to the beach and everybody being healthy, and we have questions, and then this movement came along, and I think parents started to say, why haven't I questioned more? Because I did. I mean, we talked before this, and my girls are now preteens and teenagers. And I look back and I just blindly went in. And there was one thing that I did that I fully regret. And that is when one of my kids was little, she was one of my more challenging kids. And the doctor was like, oh, it's probably because she's constipated, and that's when kids are constipated, they let that out in being frustrated and anxious. And so give her a laxative and put it in her food. And this is the healthy thing to do. And I blindly was like, gosh, this must be the answer, because I was in this mode of the doctor knows so much better than me. And then I read all these studies afterwards saying like this can increase their anxiety. It can cause them changes in their personality for life and all. And I was like, there are so many other ways to get and I don't even know if she was constipated. She was too little to tell me, yeah, I'm constipated. So I'm like, why? I look back and I think that me and many other parents started to hear Bobby Kennedy talking, and we went, wow, why aren't we allowed to ask? Why aren't we allowed to question? Why aren't we saying more? And to your point about the lights, I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I was at an event a couple years ago where there was a National Geographic photographer, and he was a night photographer. And he was saying that the light that we have at night, this bright white light, is such a problem. They've started this campaign to try to get even big cities. I think Indianapolis might be one that agreed to go back to yellow light, because if you think about what the reason is, imagine what it's doing to us, because it is changing the migratory patterns of birds and bees. So bees are no longer pollinating. Our food supply is in jeopardy because of the white lights that we have all around the globe and all around this nation. And you go to these big, Vegas and all these cities that are just lit up all the time. If it's screwing up the animals, how can it not be screwing up us?
We are animals.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we have beautiful, wonderful, and still very earth human biology in us that has been behaving in certain ways. Again, depending on, some people have different ideas of when the universe was created or whatever, but we're still looking at thousands of years of our bodies operating in a very specific way based on our environment that was our natural God-given environment. And we, as we are wont to do as humans, we like to play God. We like to go and create new things. And I don't think that we should stop. I think that that's part of the beauty of being a human being. God gave us this ability to ask why, and then go and act on the why. And, oh, wow, we can go and we can build this new thing that helps us to do this and do that and whatever. But what we didn't realize a long time ago is that every single time we go and create a thing that perhaps might make life easier. Oh, look at this bright light. It'll keep us up. It'll allow us to work longer, right? Well, we didn't know the downstream effects of that. I mean, it's similar, the silly things that we've done. If you've ever been to Hawaii, I don't know, but I remember the first time I went to Hawaii, I was on this, not a tour, but like I had like a cassette tape, and it was like I had a cassette tape back in the, and I put it in the stereo of the Jeep I was driving. And it's giving me all these little factoids about Hawaii.
Yes.
And one of the factoids was, did you know that there are no, native snakes in Hawaii? Oh, that's cool. Well, did you also know that there were no rats here until the rats came over on the ships, and then we brought rats into the Hawaiian Islands? Oh, okay. But then we thought, what would be a smart idea? We'll go get mongooses or goosei? I'm not sure what the
I don't know.
is. Mongoose. There you go. We'll go get mongoose, and we'll bring them to the islands, and then they'll hunt all the rats. The problem was nobody's even bothered to ask themselves, when are their sleeping patterns? The mongoose and the rat, one of them is nocturnal and the other is not. So then we didn't have mongoose hunting the rats. We just had a whole bunch more rats and then a whole bunch of mongoose that had no natural predators, because this is what we do.
Right.
We introduce these invasive species of plant and animal all over the world thinking we got it. We know what we're doing. And the same is true, not that exact correlation, but the same is true of us thinking we got it. We're going to go create this new thing and it's going to be great, and not even recognizing that we could very well be doing something very detrimental to us, to our children, to all of society downstream.
Well, I think that just listening to these hearings, I think it's a we got it moment where it's like, I'm right. This is a human issue. And this has been really eye-opening, because to me, this is one of the most fascinating elections I've ever watched, because this is a coming together of people who you would never think would come together. And it is beyond us. So just like coming up with the solution of what to do with rats in Hawaii, this is beyond us. I think that people see what happened. And if you're Christian, I think you look at it and you go, my gosh, Donald Trump was shot. It missed him. His head moved. It's impossible. There had to have been God involved. And then honestly, Bobby Kennedy runs at that exact time on a message that he felt like since he was little. I mean, he says he prayed from the time he was a kid or a young adult.
Well, he's like about 20 years every day. He's been praying for this.
To put me into a position where I can affect health. And in his mind, this is the fascinating thing about how God works to me. In his mind, that is that he's going to be president. But we don't always know what's best. No, let me put you in charge of health and human services. Like, you focus here. This is what you've been studying. This is what you know. Let me put you where you are meant to be. And I bring this all up because you posted something on X the other day about a new series, I think, coming out on Prime called House of David, which is the same story of not the guy anybody thought was going to be the leader, right? But here he is, this shepherd that God was like, no, that's the guy. And people are like, I don't think so. No, trust me, that's the guy. Just like Donald Trump, unusual, not who a lot of people thought would end up being president first time. And certainly the second time, there were a lot of people who thought they could stop him from being president, but that wasn't their choice. And I find that fascinating. So I just wanted to ask if you could tell us a little bit about the House of David.
Yeah, well, so at present, I'm not involved with it. Those are my friends over at the Wonder Project, John Irwin, and then also John Gunn, who is the writer director of a film that I did called The Unbreakable Boy, which I'd love to talk about.
Yes, I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, but the House of David is this. I mean, the trailer is all I've seen, and it's epic.
It looks awesome.
It's what we've. And by we, I mean anyone like me who is a lover of the story of David and who's been waiting for someone to create something this epic about that, because it's deserving. You know, I mean, obviously the story of Jesus is the most famous in the Bible, but just below that to me is the story of David. And in some ways even more, because it's Old Testament and it's like, it really is about this, you know, like you were saying, this person that nobody thought, like, you've got all these other sons, all these other kids,
big,
older, stronger,
sons. Yes.
more experienced. Why aren't they supposed to be the king? And God, you know, is like, no, it's that kid right there that's minding his own business, tending to the sheep. And also, you know, there's something that in the first, they're just filming the second season now. The first season is what's about to drop on Amazon. So it's much more his younger years. But as any of us who know the story know, I mean, it's not like this rainbows and butterflies. And, you know, David was a complicated human being and did a lot of not great stuff, and yet was still a man after God's own heart.
Just like all of us.
Just like all of us, exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why the story is so powerful, because it's a story of redemption and recognizing that we can step into a lot of darkness. And that doesn't mean that God has somehow abandoned us. It doesn't mean that God is somehow saying, oh, that's it. You know, you made a really bad wrong turn and now it's over and I can no longer reside within you or around you. Like, You know, it's an incredible story of redemption and God's grace and love and power, and you know, and I think the heart of David to recognize that when he went astray, in very big ways, in adultery and murder and all, you know, I mean, it's a gnarly story, and I think that unfortunately for a long time within, let's say, Christian filmmaking or content creation, there hasn't been a very high quality of it, first and foremost. You know, I
Right.
think there's been this kind of leaning on the message as if that's enough. Like, well, you know, as long as we got the, I don't know why I always go Southern with this, but just bear with me. I don't know, you know, as long as the message is good, then the people are going to love it. They're just, you know, we just got to get the message out there. And it's like, no, that's not true. That is not true. Because we're all accustomed to watching really great films. So when we're watching a not great film or a not great series, we feel it, and we're like, I mean, I want to support this because I think it's a good message. But why didn't you take the time to actually do it right? Right. So I think in all of us, whether you're a secular audience or a faith-based audience, we all want greatness. We all want excellence, and I think that's what God calls us to, first and foremost. But also, you got to have the balls, the chutzpah, the courage to go actually tell the story accurately. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, we know that's the story, but we don't want to, you know, that's getting a little too dark for us. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. Then why do you even read the Bible, and why do you even read the story in the Bible? Like, it's there. It's in the pages. And by the way, that's one of many, many, many stories that's got a lot of darkness in it. And you don't just pull those punches when you don't just edit those parts out when you're reading scripture. That's part of it, and that's an important part of it, because that's what redeems. If you don't have all of that the muck and the mire that you got to trudge through, then where's the redemptive side of it? If everything is just cool, then there's no redemption. Everything's just cool all the time. So anyway, yeah, I'm very excited for those guys, and you know, I've been jokingly prodding them, like, guys, you know, eventually David's got to grow up. So, you know, eventually he's got to be King David. You know?
I'm not going in the spirit for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. But I love that whole team over there, Jeremy Latcham and John Irwin, and like I said, John Gunn, who I got the pleasure of working with on Unbreakable Boy. Just really talented folks and with big vision. And I commend Amazon, MGM, for recognizing the importance of content like this, you know?
I know. I that was what I thought was great. I'm like, oh, this is so exciting. I keep hearing like stories of faith are really popular right now. I'm like, well, let's keep them popular. But let's talk about Unbreakable Boy, because I saw the trailer. I think the whole trailer was amazing. And yet I'm still like, okay, what is the full story behind the boy? But there's a point when you're the father in the film, and there's a point when you say, I think it's, I wish I could find as much joy in something as my son finds in everything. And I just think, boy, that as a parent hits so hard, because it's true. There's moments where you're just like, I'm in awe of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, man, I'm so proud of this movie. I'm not to poo-poo any of my past projects, which I'm also very proud of all of them, but there's something very specifically special, uniquely special about this film. Very God-breathed. It was, you know, I was basically, the long and the short of it, of the kind of impetus behind it was, so I was on track. We were in pre-production on American Underdog, the film where I played Kurt Warner, the quarterback. And we were trying to make that film happen before the end of 2020, but the pandemic hit and everything went crazy. And Lionsgate, the studio, was like, hey, listen, this is a $25 million budget, and that's a lot of money to roll the dice on and gamble during the pandemic, because we don't know what protocols are going to be. We don't know if we get shut down, and we can't afford that. And so, you know, all of us hadn't been working. I'm like, just like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, trying to keep my finances going, because I'm building out this ranch and studio and community in Austin. And I was spending money very liberally, thinking that I was about to have, you know, a bunch of jobs all lined up. And then, you know, somebody ate a bat in China, and then there we were.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was really, really banking on this job. And I knew that all of the crew were banking on the job because none of us had been working. And so when the Irwins called me and they said, "Hey, listen, Zach, we got some bad news. We're going to have to push American Underdog into 2021. I said, "Hey, listen, guys, I totally understand that this is outside of your control and that this is a Lionsgate call. But I'd be lying if I didn't tell you how incredibly bummed I am that we're doing this, because basically we had all been told, hey, it's a go, it's a green light, we're making this movie. And so you get everybody all revved up and then it's like, and then carpet pull. And so I was like, listen, it's breaking my heart. Like, I love you guys and I can't wait to do American Underdog. But the fact that we now have to wait another, I mean, at that point, another, 8 months in order to get back to work is really, really breaking my heart. And the Irwins, those boys, to their credit, they said, okay, hold on, let us see what we can do. And they went back to Lionsgate and they said, here's the situation. We want to do right by our cast and our crew, and we want to get everybody back to work. What can we do? And Lionsgate, to their credit, said, if you guys can give us a movie that's $10 million and below, a smaller budget that we can run, roll the dice on, and Zach says yes to it, we'll greenlight that movie and you can get into production by October, November. And so the boys at Kingdom Story, John and Andy Irwin, they sent me log lines for like half a dozen films. And I read them all, and The Unbreakable Boy just jumped out to me. It was like God saying, like, this is the movie you need to go make. And the movie is very slice of life. It's a true story about this family, the Lorette family, Scott and Teresa and their sons, and Logan and their oldest son, Austin. And Austin was born first. He was the oldest, and he was born and he was crying a lot. They weren't really sure what was going on. And they had him tested after a few years, and it turned out he had osteogenesis imperfecta, which is brittle bones disease, which he got some of that from his mother. And they were, obviously very devastated about that, and that their son was going through what he was going through, but they figured out ways to kind of mitigate that and keep moving forward. Well, then after having their second son, who was seemingly healthy and normal, their oldest son, Austin, started to behave in, let's say, atypical ways. And then they went and had him tested, and it turned out that he had autism. And so the story really is a true story about a family navigating the waters of having a child on the autistic spectrum. And I think that is one of the most apropos stories that we could be telling right now. I think that it is, as we all know, autism is something that is affecting and touches all of our lives. Either we personally have it, our children have it, a friend has it, a friend's child has it. It is ubiquitous at this point in human history. And those are children of God and ought to be loved and appreciated, as I know that every child is or should be, and every parent of an autistic child does their best to love their children. And this, I've never seen or heard of a film that represents this situation more authentically, more beautifully, with more love. And I just am very excited that we shot at the end of 2020. And because of the pandemic and people not really coming back to theaters, unless it was like some big tentpole movie, Lionsgate was like, we don't know what to do with this. We're going to sit on it for a while. And then we weren't sure if they were ever going to not sit on it. And then thank God they finally said, all right, time to release it 3 years after when it was supposed to be released. But I think that's all God's timing. It's exactly. It's all God's timing. And I'm so grateful. And I'm just so proud of it. I just think it's a really beautiful film. And I think that everyone who goes to see it will feel that. I think that even in the trailer, people, I mean, the amount of my social media that gets filled with messages of grown men and women, but I love the grown men who are like, I was watching this trailer and I started crying.
Yeah.
I just started crying, and I think that says a lot about what this subject matter means to people, and that this really is a matter of like seeing how to radically embrace every single aspect of your life and your children's lives, and still fighting for them, still looking for answers. I mean, I just read an article last night. There seems to be this breakthrough treatment for autism, which is wonderful. I do find it interesting that people, it's interesting, sad, but there's a lot of people that have been coming after me, talking about how somehow I'm saying that autism is bad, or that we should, it's like, no, hang on. I'm not judging anyone with autism in the same way that I would never judge anyone who was born missing a leg. I still wish that they would have that other leg. I still wish that children who were born with autism didn't have to be born with autism, or didn't somehow get that along their journey, right? I mean, we all know this is one of the craziest things about how we're being reprogrammed. Like, somehow normal and healthy isn't normal and healthy anymore. And it's really crazy. But this movie, it doesn't go into any of that. All it's about is about these two parents, Scott and Teresa, who are on their own journey of their learning to love themselves and love each other and figure out how to best love and support their children. And I think all of those things are completely universally applicable to everyone. And now with autism, even that is very applicable to almost all of us. And so it comes out February 21st. I just, for anyone out there that's watching right now, I implore you, I encourage you, please go watch this movie. I'm biased, obviously, but it's a beautiful film. And it's also a film that the whole family can watch. And I think that's important too, right? There's a lot of films now that it's like, I don't know, can I take my family to that? I'm not sure. And I also don't think every movie needs to be that. I'm perfectly happy with movies that are for adults only, because we should have our content that is just for us, right? And kids can have stuff that's just for kids. And then there's a whole spectrum of stuff in between where we can all watch things together. And I think that's a hallmark of some really great quality entertainment.
No, that's why when I watched the trailer, I was like, this is such a good movie for any married couple, because I could just tell. I'm like, the struggles nothing is easy. Life is not going to be easy. If you think life is going to be easy, my girlfriend used to always talk about wanting movie love. And I'm like, this is movie love. This is the true movie love. You get to see how hard life really is in such a beautiful way. So I wanted to talk about it because I saw it and I was like, this looks amazing. So I thank you for making it. So it'll be in theaters on February 21st, right?
In theaters. The good old theaters that we used to go to all the time. Yeah,
I
February
love the
21st.
theater.
Yeah, me too.
That's like, I mean, to me, you got to go to the theater, get the popcorn, sit in the big theater, watch the movie. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I know I've kept you over, but you are just so fun to talk to. Thank you so much for coming on today. Zachary Levi, make sure, The Unbreakable Boy.
Yes, The Unbreakable Boy in theaters, February 21st. Tell your friends, tell your family, go see it together. To your point, I think that going and seeing movies in the theater, there's something very, not just special, but actually quite important about it. It's where we all recognize how alike we are. You could have a whole bunch of Republicans and Democrats and libertarians and independents and people of different faiths and backgrounds, all sitting in a dark theater, all laughing at the same jokes, all crying in the same moments. And we go, oh, wow, we aren't all that different, So I do think that theaters are important, even in that regard.
I agree. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you so much. Always great to see you, Tudor. Have a great day.
You too. And thank you all for listening to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this episode and others, go to iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time. Have a blessed day.